Hello and welcome to my channel. This is the project that I will be making in this video, and I've already obviously put this one together, but I'll be making a gold version in this video. And so you can see it's got this fairy light kind of battery pack in the back here, and it's actually a light up snow globe diorama. So super cute and actually a pretty easy project to put together. So I'll be using the Paper Discovery Diorama Elegant Ornament set, as well as the Paper Discovery Village die set. So these two were designed as part of a collection, and so they are meant to be used together, but you can really use anything that you want to kind of decorate your diorama. So you'll need two of those long pieces, one of the piece that I just showed, and then one each of these pieces, which are your kind of diorama landscape scenes. And then you also get a set of these 3 circle dies. So the largest die, you'll want one full piece. Take the largest die and then center the smallest die within it to get this ring. And keep the inner circle die cut as well that falls out of that. We'll use that as well in this project. So, everything does get used. And then the middle or the second largest, you'll want to cut out of blue cardstock or whatever you want your backdrop to be. And then another piece out of acetate. The die set also comes with several other decorative dies, which I won't be using. They're kind of little snowflake dies. And this is the little fairy light set that I'll be using. I actually bought a box of 25 of these. I don't think it was too expensive, so they're really nice. They come with the battery already, and very bright, have a nice on-off switch, really easy to use, and so we'll be using that as the light up feature for the snow globe. I've already lined this piece with really strong red liner tape, and I don't know why I didn't do it, but I would have normally put on some liquid glue as well. So when you do this, I would definitely recommend using liquid glue in addition. The red line tape is really strong, but the liquid glue will be nice and permanent. So I'm going to use my bone folder to just kind of burnish this and give it a curl, because this piece is going to be basically the outer ring of our snow globe. It's going to be sort of the side edge, and so it needs to eventually form a circle. So by kind of using your bone folder to give it that curl, we're breaking down the paper fibers and softening it so that it can curve around this circle. Here I'm giving myself a little dot, which is about, I'll measure it right here, 7/8 of an inch up from the bottom. And what this dot is marking is where I'll be punching a 1/8 inch hole into this circle piece, which is the back panel to our snow globe. And this is where I'm going to feed in the fairy lights from the outside of the snow globe to the inside of the snow globe. And I'm just using you can use anything you have to poke this hole. You could even use like a pokey tool or an awl or something sharp to poke the hole. I'm using my big bite here, and mostly because I didn't know how far in I needed to push it, but it's also nice because you can actually set it to the depth that you need and then push it up against that guardrail and have it precisely punched to where you want. So again, I'm using a combination of strong, dry, double-sided adhesive as well as liquid adhesive, and The reason is because, as I mentioned, you'll get the permanency with the liquid adhesive, but you'll get an instant grab with the dry adhesive, which is really helpful for stuff like this where you're working around a curve. If I was only using liquid adhesive, it would be sliding around all over the place. And so that red line tape is gonna hold that down. And here what I'm doing is I'm laying in my blue piece, which was my backdrop to my scene, and just flipping to the back side so I see where that circle is, that, or the hole that we punched, and I'm giving myself a little pencil mark so that I can punch a hole through this piece as well, because again, we need to feed our fairy lights in all the way through to the center of our snow globe. And again, I'm going to use dry adhesive here as well. I'm not using super strong tape here because this panel is just decorative. But I'm still going to burnish everything down. I'm still going to use liquid adhesive to make sure this is nice and permanent. But I don't need my red line tape here because it's just laying flat, really. And here we've got our 3 landscape pieces, and the die does score these lines, and that's one thing that I forgot to mention at the outset is the die will score all of your lines for you, but I didn't show it on camera because I did it during the prep for this. I actually go through and score those lines again on my scoreboard just to really soften those score lines and make sure that when I go to fold along those score lines that my cardstock doesn't crack. I'm using just a variety of different cardstock. Some of this is Centura Pearl. Some of it's just non-brand, unbranded cardstock that I got on Amazon. So it's a variety, but what I found is that it's really helpful to score multiple times just to really soften that paper, and that way you get less cracking. Before I get too far in decorating, I'm giving myself a couple of pencil marks at the very bottom and at the very top. That way I know like where my true north is, because this is a circle. It's hard for me sometimes to tell like what is exactly up and what is, the bottom. And I paused it there for a second just to show you that while it can be hard to kind of get into these little areas, you still do really want to try to burnish anytime where you're placing glue. Liquid glue, burnishing is really good to really spread out that glue. Make sure you don't get any, bumps or anything. I'm going to turn my glue gun on because we'll need that in a second. And with dry adhesive, some dry adhesives actually need pressure in order to kind of reach their full adhesive strength. So either way, whichever type of glue you choose to use, burnishing will help you get the most out of that glue and really maximize its kind of stickiness long term. So I'm going to feed in my fairy lights from the back, and you can see the lights pull through perfectly through that 1/8 inch hole. And the fairy lights do have, at least the ones that I bought, they do have a long kind of lead at the end towards the battery pack. And I'm just going to kind of curl those up and tape that to just with some low-tack tape, just so that it's easier to handle, because I'm going to be trying to attach the fairy lights with some hot glue, and it's just easier if the battery pack isn't dangling around. So I'm just going to loop this around, and every 2 to 3 inches or so, I'm going to put a dot of glue. And as much as possible, I'm going to put the glue somewhere that's hidden. So on the lower portion, obviously, it's a lot easier to hide the glue dot because you've got those landscape pieces. And then going across the top, I just try to keep it minimal. So I'm going in between those landscape pieces as well. And I'm actually putting the fairy lights, as you can see here. I start all the way in the back, and then I'm actually going to work my way towards the front. So the lights aren't just being coiled around at the very back. We're going to get a very even sort of light from the back to the front. And I've got one little last light bulb standing up there. That's intentional. And you'll see what I do with that in a little bit here. So I try to keep the hot glue minimal also, because if you tilt it just so and somebody really peers in, they can't actually see those blobs of hot glue. I tried to make the little hot glue dots to about the size of each of the light bulbs, so that it kind of looks like it could pass for a light bulb. But if somebody looks closely, they'll be able to tell. So this little backmost scene here, I don't know where I got that die. It's a border die that has this cute little scene. And I just took the largest circle die and die cut that. And so I'm going to do a little bit of dry fitting here just so that I can pick and choose the houses from the village die set. And with this last final bulb here, I'm actually going to attach that to my church, and it'll be the light inside the church, which I thought was a really cute idea. So initially I just taped it down with Scotch tape, but later I'm going to go back in and hot glue that to the church itself, because I think that's going to be more stable over time. For some reason, the Scotch tape didn't feel like it was going to be as strong of a stick. I have this little deer that I thought I would add to the scene, but it scale-wise just didn't look right. And in fact, those bunnies are probably ginormous bunnies if we're talking scale. So, the scene is more just for cuteness than it is for actual to scale representation. So with these houses, I have 2 of each, and I'm going to glue them mostly together, but I'm leaving the bottom separate because I'm actually going to sandwich the landscape piece between the 2 houses. And here I'm using my T-square ruler, and I'm just lining that up with the top and bottom pencil mark so that I know what is exactly up and down. And I'm just checking, here's that opening that I leave at the bottom of the houses, so you can see how I sandwich the scene right in between there. And I end up moving that house back 1 level. But the T-square ruler just helps me know what is exactly up and down, and that way I can make sure that my houses are lined up so that they are straight up and down. It's a little bit hard for me to tell on a circular piece, but that's why I added the pencil marks. And then I realized I didn't glue down my backmost scene here, so I took a moment to do that. And one of the reasons why I die cut that backmost scene as a full scene all the way to the bottom is so that it actually covers that hole that we punched. And so you can't even tell that the fairy lights are fed in from the back through that hole, because from the inside, we're covering the hole with that backmost scene that you see there. And on the back, we're going to cover that hole as well. So everything's going to look really, really nice and polished on this one. And those are a couple of the things that I sort of improved on after making the first snow globe. Because every time I make a project, I always kind of take a step back and think about it, and I have more ideas for how I can kind of improve it the next time around. And so that was definitely an improvement in this one over my first one. Here I'm taking a moment to die cut some more little doors because I just didn't like the look of the doors being open. So I'm going to go ahead and inlay those door pieces back in. And I did end up needing 2 of each of those just to make sure that it's a nice firm stick, and that it also has sort of the same opaqueness when it's lit up as the rest of the house. And I don't know if you glimpsed it just then, but I did get the new magic mat, and I am loving it. I haven't been using it super long, so I don't know how long it will hold up over time. But my standard size die cutting machine is the Cuttlebug, and I'm on my last set of plates that were, from Cuttlebug itself. And there are, other manufacturers out there of plates, that are the right size, but I thought I would give the magic mat a try because I feel like that's probably going to last a lot longer than plates would, and so far I'm loving it. I did also treat myself to an electronic die cutting machine. I got the Gemini machine from Crafter's Companion, and these magic mats from scrapbook.com work through the Gemini as well. So I'm really hoping that they kind of make the plates last a lot longer, because one of the things that I hear is that, especially on the Gemini, with so much pressure and force, it really does warp your plates much quicker. So as I was on that tangent, I did go ahead and adhere the front window of our snow globe, and here I'm working on the stand, which will be the bottom of the snow globe. And again, I used my bone folder to just curl those side pieces a little bit, and I'll be using a combination of strong dry adhesive and liquid adhesive when I put this together. The thing I thought about as I was doing this, but I just didn't have a solution for, and I was already recording, so I didn't want to pause to think about it more. But for my next one, I'm actually going to hide some weights in this stand. So I'm going to glue down some pennies to the inside of the stand, probably a few pennies to the bottom and a few pennies towards the front. And here I'm paused so that you can see that you really need to, this is another area where as you glue, you kind of need to work that paper along that curve and just try to get it to match the curve as much as possible. And of course, burnish. And this is the reason why I really love using the combination of dry and wet adhesive, because that dry adhesive, the red line tape, is just really gonna help it grab and stay in place as the wet adhesive dries, and so it'll keep that curve much better than if I was to just use liquid adhesive by itself. So as I was saying with the weights, so I'm gonna glue some pennies into this bottom piece here, because that's going to add enough weight to achieve two things. It's going to make the whole piece feel a little bit more substantial because it's going to weigh more, but the main reason to do it is to make it more stable, because the fairy lights have that little battery pack that I'm going to be mounting onto the back of the snow globe. So this whole thing is a little bit, it will stand for sure. It will stand up on its own, but it's a little bit weighted towards the back. And by putting some weights into this piece, we can hide the weights, but we can actually counteract some of the weight of the battery pack and make it a little bit more even, a little bit more balanced. So again, I'm going to use some liquid and dry adhesive. Now, on my first iteration, I didn't put dry adhesive across that straight edge along the front and the back, and that was definitely an improvement on this one, to have that dry adhesive along that top portion and the back portion, that straight line. Really important, because you can actually burnish those edges in, and it just gives you a really nice tight fit. And that's one of the reasons why this iteration was just such a more polished version because I used both dry and wet adhesive. Here I'm just giving myself a little tick mark because I want that battery pack to show a little bit out of this pocket. That way you can kind of just, reach in and flip the on-off switch without actually pulling the whole thing out. Here I'm measuring the circumference of my pocket by just rolling it from one end to the other. And that first foam strip that I cut wasn't long enough. I think I ended up needing something like 6¼ inches. So I'm going to stack up my foam to roughly match the thickness of the battery pack. And I end up needing 3 strips or 3 layers of foam. Now on my next one, I'm actually going to dot some dry adhesive in between each of these foam layers. That's one thing that I forgot to do. Again, that liquid adhesive is going to make it permanent. And this is one thing that I definitely don't want falling off. But I remembered to do it as I was applying the foam to this little pocket piece, but I forgot that I needed to do that in between the foam layers as well. But that's okay. I'll just improve on my third one. But this still looks really good. It's still a really, really nice finish. I'm just hoping that, it really does hold up over time. So you can see here, I'm going to put some liquid right on the foam, and that's going to cover up our hole where our fairy light is fed through to the inside. And I did put the battery pack in there just to make sure that it fit, but I definitely want to let that dry before I really fit that in there. Now I'm using 2 Sizzix die sets for the decorative elements instead of using the decorative elements that came in the Paper Discovery die set. So these holly branches come from the Winter Leaves die set, and the ID number for that is 663425. If it's still available for purchase, I'll include links to it in the description box below, along with the Paper Discovery items, if those are still available as well. And this sort of berry branch is also from that same Winter Leaves set, and I just die cut this out of some white glitter card. And initially I was going to use the holly leaves or the holly branches that I die cut out of the same gold pearlescent, but as you can see there, it just doesn't it blends in too much because it's the exact same gold pearlescent paper as the rest of the Snowglobe. I didn't like that, so I decided I'm gonna use glitter paper instead, which is what I did on the silver one, the silver version. So I don't know why I didn't do that initially at the outset, but I did off camera go ahead and die cut those pieces out, and I die cut a second time the little berries in those holly branches. And then these little flowers are from a different die set from Sizzix. It's from Linda Canase, and it's 663603, and it's the Card in a Box Christmas set. And as a finishing touch, I'll add some Nuvo drops to the center of those flowers, but I already made the drops on a paper release liner, so I'll let those dry before gluing them into the center of these flowers. And so there's our final project all lit up. I know it's hard to actually make out the scene, it's just so bright on camera, but in real life it's not that bright. You can actually make out the full kind of village scene. But I love how this turned out. Definitely the little improvements that I made between this one and the first one make a world of difference. And as I mentioned, I have a couple more improvements that I can think of to make the third one even better, especially adding some weight into that bottom stand. I think that's going to make a big difference, and it's just going to make this feel so much more substantial. See the little hole there? Yeah, I didn't like that. And I also didn't like that my backmost scene wasn't like a full scene. So that's the other thing with this version, the gold version. There's no hole. It's all kind of snowy white all the way to the bottom, even on my backmost panel. So everything looks a lot more, clean and finished. The sides all look nice and neat. Everything, there's no gaps or anything. And so, I think the first one, the silver one, still looks good, and I'm gonna try to close up those gaps as much as possible. But I really am a big fan of using the combination of dry and wet adhesive. I really think it just makes all the difference in the world. But here are the two versions side by side. And to be honest, after all the die cutting, I think this took maybe an hour and a half to put together. So not too terribly long of a project. And I think these are going to make for really fun Christmas presents. So I'm really excited. And you see how much lead there is in that wire. So that way, if this is something that, they keep over time, it's going to be really easy to change out the batteries once this initial battery runs out. Well, I hope that you liked my project today, and if you did, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. And if you want to be sure to catch new videos as they get posted, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you get a notification whenever I post new videos to my channel. Thank you so much, and until my next video, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye!